the frame are the children.
Breathing or liver problems.
Warm juice without the fiber.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish the same fake stories
Without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
It's Tuesday afternoon. I'm Tom Crenn in the Twin Cities with NPR News. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Was that a good enough clap? We try to bring facts to our audience. I mean, it's a very old-fashioned 20th century proposition in some ways. We're not in the opinion business here. Our reporters go out into the field to try to get the story, what's going on, and bring those voices to our air. What I do personally is I do a lot of interviews. The interviews are, can this person tell the story or shed light on the story, this one voice? I grew up in New Jersey, New York area, so we had 3 or 4 newspapers available, print newspapers, and then you had several channels doing a newscast.
Not that long ago, it's really amazing to think that the only way you can get news is by reading a newspaper, listening to the radio, watching television.
News was something you consumed in the same way, usually at a particular time of day. You would come home from work and you'd put on the 6 p.m. news. You'd get up in the morning and you'd read your morning newspaper. So it was both the same place and often the same time. It was a habit.
When the news broadcast was over, you had to wait the next day until you get a new newspaper, until the next news broadcast is on. And we had a very limited diet of what was available.
For Johnny Snell, age 15 of Hagerstown, Maryland, days begin early during the school year. They begin with an early morning exercise that has become a tradition for American boys.
Fox News, Sean Hannity has 3.25 million people a night. Rachel Maddow on MSNBC has about 2.5 million people a night. When you tune in, you know what you're going to get. Both of those networks have their political bias in prime time. It's sort of self-selecting in a way. It's more informational with a bias than it is news. It's not a newscast.
Most journalism in the United States is funded by advertising. If you think about it, what journalism does is it brings audiences to advertisers, right? They have to find an appealing set of news stories that people will watch, and they'll watch the advertisements, and that's how they make money.
Whenever I see a story being reported, I always have to ask myself, is this a story that they're publishing because having this story out there is for the greater good? Or is it because it's going to generate them the most revenue at the end of the day?
Journalism has always been a bit against taking risks, right? Because it wants to appeal to as large an audience as possible. And so more radical stories would be usually left out because you don't want to offend people, and then you lose audience members, and then you lose money.
There's often little to no coverage whatsoever of, say, police brutality, or the glaring statistics about climate change, or the growing overreach of the prison industrial complex. You often do not get an analysis about how the economy disproportionately affects people of color. You only get the usual statistics of, say, unemployment or minimum wage or GDP, but those numbers are never applied to the cultural context that surrounds them.
Most journalists would never say, yes, I did this story, or didn't do this story because the owners are the owners. But I think they intuit a sense of what news looks like, and they have to do the kind of journalism that's going to keep their audiences going. They're going to make news that appeals to maybe an older audience because that's who's already watching. If you watch the advertisements during a lot of these programs, they're usually for products that would skew towards older people. And so it's hard sometimes for younger people to see themselves in the news.
I use this remote control to contact Life Call, my 24-hour emergency medical response service.
marketplace ideas is a long-running concept about how we can compare different types of thinking to try to figure out what's best. And in some ways, that's a great model because it really gets us to think about what are the best ideas, what are the different competing ideas for any situation.
We don't have to worry about true versus false because the best ideas, the right ideas will rise to the top. The fact that when you go out to eat at a restaurant, you probably go to Yelp or Google first kind of shows that a lot of people have a lot of faith in the marketplace of ideas.
Ideas always are packaged, and we always respond to the message and the messenger. It's about ideas and the successful conveying, the persuasive conveying of those ideas. If it is a supermarket or a marketplace of ideas, that different packages tell you different things, but the package, the messenger, matters as much as the message.
We won't always have a perfect marketplace of ideas because that assumes that everyone is a rational actor who relies on reason and generally strives for the truth. And obviously there's a lot of competing motivations in all these public forums that prevent people from doing that.
But at the same time, like any other marketplace, there are bigger players and smaller players, and some people have more power and they get to set the agenda about what we think about or what ideas are prominent. And other ideas really struggle to come to the surface. They're seen as very marginal, not taken very seriously. So we can think about it as a marketplace, but we have to understand that like all marketplaces, some people have more power than others.
I think it depends on how old you are, but I think the main news source now is the phones in everyone's pocket. That's our main news source, but that's not a news source, that's a delivery device.
At any point, we're able to stop and read news, see what's going on. And this has actually changed news diets. The studies on this have shown that what's happened is that people actually consume news more often, but they get it in a snack size, right? A little bit here and a little bit there throughout the day. Not a lot of deep reading, right?
Now, I mean, how many news sources can we follow on Twitter? How many alerts do you get on your phone? It's all changed.
There's a technological revolution that's introducing new formats of consuming media and producing media that are threatening the existing business models.
There are also different kinds of funding sources. Sometimes there are nonprofits or there are activists who are building these kinds of news sites that have a very strong sense of opinion, a very strong moral sense. And that gives us much more variety than we've ever had in the past.
You can always find somebody who agrees with you online. It used to be there are lots of social norms in place, and that social pressure can deter people from saying things that the people around them are going to find repugnant. On social media, when you have people who agree with you, the outside social pressure just doesn't have the same weight. And so as long as you have your group with you, you can stand up in the face of people who not only vehemently disagree with you, but who are trying to give you accurate facts. Algorithms are designed to maintain your attention. Right? They want to keep you on on that particular platform, in that space, as long as possible. Because back to money, they're monetizing your attention. To do that, they often are giving you things that they think you want to see. And so that can create a filter bubble, that can create a presentation of ideas that they think matches the you that you present to the world through social media, and can narrow that world by always just representing the same things you already like in more and stronger forms, without giving you as much opportunity to serendipitously find things that you didn't know you liked, that you never would have guessed you're interested in, because they're narrowly focused on reproducing the things that worked in the past.
You're not hearing the other side or the many other sides that might be out there. If you're only in an echo chamber, you're only hearing things that confirm your bias.
The people it does happen for are active and they're loud and they complain and they troll and they do all these things online to get attention. You can come to see other people with other ideas as the enemy because they believe something different.
You know what? I will go to hell before I sit here and I watch this country and the world turned over to these savages. I'm done, I'm pissed, and I'm not putting up with it anymore.
The idea that an algorithm can exploit your tendency to believe what you see first and gradually feed your confirmation bias of what you believe is incredibly scary for the free thought that a society should have.
He's got a Kazakhstan flag. Do you even know what that is?
That's not a Nazi flag.
Track Nazis. This motherfucker's a Nazi.
Either have a conversation with me or have a fight. Those are your only options.
Algorithms can do some of that, but it doesn't create filter bubbles to the extent that you never see the other side. In fact, social media are still a place where you tend to see more diverse political viewpoints than you do in a lot of other spaces.
We have to be more responsible to make sure in the news we're consuming, we're getting enough perspectives that we can think for ourselves.
Now we're able to find just massive amounts of stories. If we're interested in a topic, there's no end to the news we can find on that topic.
In some ways, the marketplace of ideas has expanded.
And I think as news consumers, we need to understand how this system works, that there are a lot of these processes that are trying to feed us the things that we like. And sometimes we have to do a work ourselves to stop and say, hey, what's out there that I'm not seeing?
When you devote yourself to finding the truth about what these issues are and how we can best solve them, that's what motivates people to consume media, because they're doing it because they want to know more. And if you feed their desire for knowing more by giving them genuine and authentic knowledge, that's when you make the best connections. And only in engaging in conversation with people across the aisle can you find truth in that conflict, because somewhere in the clash between a liberal and a conservative is the truth about how things should be. The smallest unit of politics is a conversation between two people who are trying to figure out what's best for their state or their city or their country. And when you add all of those up together, you can make a profound ripple across our political system.